The Short Game is listener-supported on Patreon. If you'd like to support the show and join us on our Discord, head to theshortgame.net or patreon.com/theshortgame.
Welcome back to The Short Game. This is a show about short video games, games that respect your time. I am Raygan Kelly, and I'm here this week with two fine co-hosts.
Once again, Raygan, it's me, Pizza Nate.
Nate, we finally have an episode just for Pizza Nate. Finally. And it's a me, Pizza Shane. And this week we are talking about virtuosic weird platformer Pizza Tower. I was very excited to play this game. We'll get into all the details about it. Pizza Tower is a real weird one. But before we dig in, we've been starting the episode, the show every week with mandatory banter. And I thought we'll start this week with a question for you guys.
Do we have to do it this time?
Yeah, what's on your pizza, guys? What's on your pizza? Your ideal pizza.
Where do I even start? I mean, I've got a whole other podcast that I do, which is about my pizza toppings.
You're holding out on me, Nate. I didn't know about your pizza topping podcast. I would subscribe.
No, it all depends on, set and setting. What type of pizza am I having? What guests do I have around me? Because it is my opinion that there is no bad pizza topping. I like every topping on a pizza, but I will say,
a really bold claim. I'm sure we could come up with something that you wouldn't want on your pizza.
Well, sure. If you said like birthday cake, maybe I'd give that a shot.
I could be convinced to try a birthday cake.
Yeah, certainly there's something that but I mean, in the expanse of pizza toppings that you will see regularly, I like them all. I had a pizza in Colorado one time that was like shrimp and barbecue sauce and bacon, and it was a real mess, but I enjoyed it. So to answer your question, though, actually, while I like a ton of different pizza types, give me just a good classic pepperoni pizza, and I'm going to be happy. If I'm not having that, I'll take a Supreme, and then also I just like a good cheese pizza sometimes. There's nothing wrong with a nice cheese pizza.
Nothing wrong with a cheese pizza.
Yeah.
If you're 5 years old.
No, I've heard it. I've heard this before. This is not my thought, but I've thought a lot about it, and I kind of agree with it. Is that pizza is not improved with toppings; it's just made different. So pizza is good, just as good as cheese as it is with pepperoni or whatever. It's just different. It's like different flavors. So you did not know the wormhole that you opened.
This
when
is
you
a very
asked this
philosophical answer, Nate. You really should have a pizza podcast.
Shane, what's your answer?
My personal pizza opinion, my favorite pizza would be like a caprese, what do you call it? Where it's like, similar to like a margarita pizza with the olive oil, with the garlic sauce. Thank you very much. And I do have a no-go pizza topping, and that is jalapenos. I just feel like they don't belong.
Oh man, I
love jalapenos. I love them in lots of contexts. I just feel like they don't need to be on it. Like, what other stuff that you would normally put on a pizza goes well with the jalapenos? Just not that much.
Jalapeno and sausage is a great combo. Or if you're going all veggie, jalapeno and green pepper is a great combo.
I'll do jalapeno on a chicken pizza, because then sometimes I feel like it's kind of like nachos. It's got that vibe. I like chicken on my nachos. But I don't know. I feel you, Shane. I'm not really big on jalapenos on pizza in general, but they're not a no-go for me.
Mm-hmm. And I love it when they just like throw the whole deli section on the pizza too. Just every kind of meat.
Prosciutto. Throw that shit on. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have a whole lot of like controversial pizza opinions, but not trying to be a contrarian, but I think that the anchovy is extremely underrated. When I was a kid growing up, I thought, that the whole joke of, there's certain foods that were jokes in cartoons back then. Things like spinach was like,
the
why
90s
would
were real
anyone
rough.
ever eat spinach, right? It's like
liver and onions,
yeah,
Brussels sprouts.
Yeah, and all that shit turns out to be like my favorite stuff when I got old. But anchovies, man, they're like little salty, delicious. Like when you're a kid, like all you see of anchovies is like a pizza with like stink lines coming off.
Yeah,
of it,
little tiny
like
fish
bones sticking out, and that's not what anchovies are like at all. You crazy like cartoons. Like I love it, man. Anchovies are great. So give me a pizza with anchovies.
Was it Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that they were pretty anti-anchovy?
Almost certainly, although I think actually they were kind of pro anchovy, but that was kind of the joke that like the turtles lived in the sewer and ate trash, and they would eat anchovy pizzas.
All I've ever wanted in my life is a pizza that tastes as good as the pizza from the cartoon Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles looked, with that dripping cheese. It looked so good.
Absolutely.
It looked like it was made out of yellow Nickelodeon gack.
Yes. Stretch all the way across a room, snap back like a rubber band.
Looks great.
Love it. Well, glad we had a chance to talk about pizza, because we've got to warm up our pizza muscles before we talk about Pizza Tower, a truly weird game, a game that I wanted to play from the first minute I saw it, and everything I learned about it made me want to play it more. So here's the quick pitch on Pizza Tower. Pizza Tower's Steam description calls it a fast-paced 2D platformer inspired by the Wario Land series, with an emphasis on movement, exploration, and score attack, focusing on highly stylized pixel art inspired by the cartoons from the 90s and highly energetic soundtrack, which I think is a pretty solid description, but it's one of those things that if you're not getting something visually in your mind, I think it's worth, we never like to just be like, here, compare X to Y, but like you kind of have to a little bit here. First of all, this is very, very based on the Wario Land series, a series of games that I've played a lot, and I've done a lot of reading and thinking about, because a few years ago I read a book that I frankly don't recommend. It's kind of boring, but I love the Game Boy Advance. Wario Land 4 is one of the better games on the Game Boy Advance. It's a really, truly strange sort of missing link or like divergent evolution in the Nintendo platformer. And Wario Land 4 was sort of the end of the line for that style of platformer. Nobody makes these anymore, apart from apparently this guy, Pizza Tower guy.
I got to stop there for a second about Pizza Tower guy. I am a big fan of Artur games, and there's just I encourage makers of games to put your name on your game, and he's done so in a way that I have never seen a developer do before, renaming himself after his own game, which is fantastic. So here's to you, Pizza Tower guy.
I don't know what his name is. I just called him Pizza Tower guy because I don't know. I don't know what his name is, Shane.
I thought he goes by Pizza Tower guy. When I looked him up on a wiki, he was listed as Pizza Tower guy.
His Twitter is Pizza Tower Game. Let's see.
I still can't tell if you're joking, Shane.
There's a fan wiki. Looking at it now, it doesn't have the name of the dev on it. The Steam page says Tour de Pizza. Developer is Tour de Pizza. Self-published. So
one of the weird things, this is a bit of a rabbit hole to fall down, but when you Google this game, one of the top things that Google asks is like, is this what you're searching for? Is like, it says, is Pizza Tower a real game?
Well, I think the problem there, Shane, is that there's an NFT-based bullshit game also called Pizza Tower. So if you Google this game, most of the results are about this game, but there are also results about an NFT based cryptocurrency driven slot machine game called Pizza Tower. I don't know much, if anything, about that. I choose not to. But there is some disambiguation happening there. And I would guess that the question of, is Pizza Tower a real game, is people more along the lines of asking, like, is there really a game I can play with my, I don't know, pizza topping NFT or something?
I've been asking myself that ever since I got these damn things.
Spending all my family's money on pizza NFTs.
I mean, if you're gonna buy them, you might as well get pizza ones, you know?
Yeah, because then at least you can eat them, right? I don't know how cryptocurrency works, but I'm pretty sure.
I'm pretty sure you can eat them.
I got a really rare ape chovy.
Oh, God.
We're like a year late on these jokes. We
really are, but you know what? Still funny enough to me. I still take a lot of Schadenfreude in the NFT explosion and then contraction. Right. So back to the game. I wanted to quickly talk about my backstory of like with the Wario Land games, because this is so based on the Wario Land games, especially Wario Land 4. Wario Land has a lot of things about it that, like, technically a spin-off of Mario, but it has a lot of things about it that are very distinctive. The Wario Land series, Wario is essentially indestructible. He doesn't have lives. He can't die. Or at least that's not true in all of the Wario Land games, but at least in Wario Land 4, you can't kill Wario. He's only ever inconvenienced. And he has a number of transformations. So a lot of the times throughout the levels, you'll encounter something like he eats something or gets squashed by something or, puts on a weird suit or something. And the power-ups are these sort of transformations that are not just about like giving you one new move, but like totally transforming your moveset. Also Wario Land, at least Wario Land 4, has a format of going into a level from kind of a central hub, going into the level all the way to the end, collecting collectible items along the way, and then sort of setting off an escape sequence by reaching the end of the level. And you have to backtrack through that entire level, usually along a slightly changed path, because things will have changed on your way out that were different from on your way in, and escaping the level before a timer runs out. And that is a format that we just, like, Nintendo made 4 of those and they never revisited it. I mean, I think there's like a Wario World or something for the Wii or something. I never played that one, but like the Wario Land series is essentially dead, has been since 2001. And it feels like a game design idea that Nintendo polished quite heavily and had gotten something really good and interesting and then dropped like a hot pizza and never revisited. And nobody else ever revisited. There's 1,000 imitations of Mario, but there's so few imitations of the Wario Land games. And that's what drew me to this is like, it's a really interesting game design that doesn't get revisited very often.
The number one thing that they clearly took is that, the core innovation of these Wario games is to have an overweight Italian man trying to get money. Yeah. So here, I think the twist they've put on it is that he's trying to get money for sympathetic reasons instead of just because he's a fat asshole who wants to fuck up Mario's day.
But they did retain his general disgusting vibe.
They did.
Like,
artistically,
Peppino,
this game has
spaghetti.
Peppino spaghetti is right out of, they said 90s cartoons. I think there's a huge debt owed to John Kraflowski, the guy that did Ren and Stimpy. Mm-hmm. Specifically, so
a lot of that, but I'd also say other things with a similar vibe from the era. I got a lot of Courage the Cowardly Dog vibes from this as well, and other shows of that era with the sort of like I don't know. I kind of describe the style as like aggressively ugly and like willing to have expressions, squashes and stretches and whatnot that go entirely off model. Like, Peppino runs and, his face transforms, or he looks at something and his eyes bug out in a way that like just completely transforms his entire silhouette. Like he's a true cartoon character. He's not like a cute model or a well-designed sprite. He is a series of weird caricatures.
Really, really great. The style of it is ridiculously unique. Like, it uses this kind of 1 pixel thick outline and like super saturated colors to make it look like something that someone drew in MS Paint. But by having like genuinely really talented classic animation style to it. Those two things are things I've never really seen put together before, and it took me a while. It even also like really reflected like just generally like 90s platformers in things like the menus, like the way the menus would have like art scrolling diagonally, in the background, and lots of little goofy
Toe Jam and
gooey
Earl,
sliders.
big time,
TJ&E,
big time,
TJ&E, yeah.
big. The platformer, Funky Land,
Panagon Funkatron.
Funkatron, yes.
Yeah, I got a lot of. I keep saying I got a lot of blank vibes out of this, and I'm the Boss Baby guy. I definitely felt some of
Earl.
that Toe Jam and Toe Jam and Earl Panagon Funkatron, but specifically for me, like Shane and I both played an absolute ton of Panagon Funkatron. So I mean, what in this world doesn't remind me of Panagon Funkatron?
Yeah, there's also this element of it's like also kind of horrible to look at a lot of the times.
Yeah.
And I in a similar way that Ren and Stimpy would do, like intentionally, incredibly well done, kind of gross out art, right? Where you're like, why am I seeing so many lines on this person's face? Or it's like borderline grotesque. And it's often done in a similar way to what Ren and Stimpy would do, where it's like freeze frames or lightly animated scenes that are grotesque and kind of hard to look at, and then it goes back to the core animation of the game. There's a lot of title cards. Every level you're going into is kind of treated like an episode of a cartoon, so it has these title cards that are like horribly drawn, and I mean that in a like an intentional, that's what they wanted you to feel type of way. I think for some people they probably just think end to end that it's beautiful, but for me it's like it's so gross, but
it's art style is constantly shifting. Like you mentioned the loading in like those title cards, but there's also this little TV in the top right hand corner of the screen that's just constantly showing just sort of I mean, it's
such
just
a
there to
close-up of
give you
Peppino and his weird expressions.
It's such a weird, what an interesting, like that right there is such a specific example of how strange this game is. Just a full like 10% of the screen is dedicated to a little TV that is just showing you your main character's face reacting to what's going on around him. It's bizarre, and it is very 90s. Yeah, flashy, wacky, like, the 90s are edgy and cool and strange,
Yeah, Shane, by the way, I did just find his he seems to go by Pizza Tower Guy on itch.io. So yeah, I don't know what else to call him other than I just lucked into just calling him that, I guess, or maybe that was my subconscious.
Yeah,
but
that's what he is on Patreon too. It looks like
that's another interesting aspect to this. This game was originally has been in development a long time. He supported the development by having a Patreon and releasing demos, and people supported him through through the work of developing this game. And it kind of shows it has the feeling of something with like a lot of depth to it, a lot of like it feels like it has kind of a fandom. It feels like a cult game. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like you just have to look at the Steam page, and there are a lot of cryptic jokes being made in the reviews, and they are all 5 stars. This is a game by a guy who like has cultivated an audience for this incredibly weird thing that you wouldn't like. I wouldn't have been sure a thing like this had an audience apart from me, but apparently it does.
I mean, it's a pizza-based platformer. I feel like this is a game that was targeted directly at me as well. So I think it's a broader market than you'd expect. And while there's a ton of stuff that is trying to play off of the nostalgia of millennials and the 90s, I've not seen as much going at it through this angle, and then tying it to the Wario 4 stuff as well. It's enough niches stacked on top of each other that I think it actually has a pretty broad audience.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to mention earlier, but part of the reason that I was so interested to play this was that I think Wario Land 4 is one of the most interesting game designs in all time. And it's one that I've thought a lot about because a few years back, when I was trying to sort of up my game in terms of being able to talk about video games on a podcast, around the same time when we were starting this show, I read an entire book called Game Design Companion: A Critical Analysis of Wario Land 4 by Daniel Johnson. This is a book I don't recommend anymore. I read it with some interest at the time because there aren't that many books that take a really academic approach to writing about a specific game and breaking it down into its component parts and talking a lot about its individual mechanics and elements. In the long run, I think that this book is like, it's really self-important. It was the sort of the guy really seemed to want to he create a language for game criticism where I think his whole idea was that he wanted to break game criticism down into something where it would be like evidence-based science, where you could break down a game with a very consistent system and decide what was a good and bad game on an almost mathematical level. And I think that's a flawed concept. But I just pulled up the page, and this is a quote from his first chapter. Without trying to sound arrogant, I would contest that there has never been a deeper, more comprehensive piece of writing ever written about a video game. And I think he's not wrong. It's an entire book just absolutely exhaustively breaking down every mechanic and level of Wario Land 4. And it's a game that is very deceptively complicated. So all that is to say, I've done a lot of playing of Wario Land 4 and a lot of thinking and reading about Wario Land 4. And I was so excited to see this game get this game so explicitly based on Wario Land 4. And there's so many things that it's doing that are specifically from that game. So let's talk about the mechanics. Let's talk about the physicality of moving this weird Italian around.
They just took Wario and gave him a shine spark.
They did. They gave him a shine spark when I learned the like hyper jump or whatever they call it in this. It is just a shine spark from Super Metroid. And I think that's great. I love it.
And also a bunch of Sonic moves and a bunch of standard Mario moves. I mean,
if anything, there's more moves in this than in the Wario Land game. I pulled up. There's a pretty decent fan wiki for this. And if you click on the article page for Peppino Spaghetti, it has a little table of contents at the top where
I'm going to laugh every time you say his name.
I know. I love his name so much.
Yeah.
It lists all of his powers or his main abilities. And I'm not going to list them all, but let me just explain to you, you have to scroll almost 2 screens, and I'm on a pretty big monitor, to get past the table of contents where it lists all his abilities. His main abilities, he has a jump and a body slam. He has a dash, which you can activate by running fast in any direction, which you do by holding down a button. So you hold down a button and he will dash. You don't even have to hold the stick. He just dashes as long as you're holding down one of the triggers. And the dash has multiple stages. You can so he'll power up the dash the longer he runs in any one direction. You can do a quick turn. He does a roll and a dive move that are both independently doable while you are dashing. He can combine moves like the dash and the body slam into like a dash drop. You can go from the dash into the super jump.
This game has a hell of a tutorial to teach you all these things, by the way.
Oh man, it's a lot. And then it goes on and on from there.
Well, it never stops because you're getting into the core move set, and then every level tends to introduce either distinct move sets or ones that you'll carry with you forward. And
right. Giant swing, spinning pile driver, uppercut, belly slide, rising uppercut. There's a taunt move. You can use the taunt move to parry. You can break dance. There are 14 different transformations that you can acquire at various different points in the levels. Things like Firebutt Peppino, or Ghost Peppino, or Rocket Peppino, or Sticky Cheese Peppino. All of these are different transformations.
Or playing mini golf Peppino.
That was so weird. There's a whole mini golf level.
Yeah, turning into a big bubble Peppino. I mean, there's a lot to to say about this game, and a lot of positive things to say. But I think like my takeaway from what I truly enjoyed the most out of this game was exactly this platforming variety. I love platformers, one of my favorite genres, and usually you're introduced with a move set early on, and then the game just becomes mastering that move set. Often there'll be items or something that come in that maybe integrate or challenge your adeptness to that core move set. But this game, you've got a huge core move set, and then every level is some introduction of another set of moves, and it's balancing them all, and it can be a real challenge too. Like Peppino's incredibly sticky. If you're
can
holding,
basically climb up a wall. As long as you're holding down the dash button, he sticks to walls and can climb straight up them at pretty high speed.
And it's like, imagine Sonic, where with Sonic, when you get it going at full speed, if you hit something, you stop it, and there's this like momentum killer. And whether you like it or not, like that is a core element of Sonic, is like killing your momentum. With this game, a lot of times, if you're holding that button, it's just, you will run in any direction continuously, because you'll stick to everything, going up walls, going around things. It can be kind of challenging to actually, you have to be the one to let go of the buttons, and you have to be the one to stop pressing things. And that's the only way to actually navigate a particular platforming challenge, is actually using his moves less, because there's something that happens. Any combo of buttons you do does a totally new thing. So you have to really be manage that.
Also contrasting with Sonic, Sonic is at his most, like, Sonic is a game about going fast, but he's also at his most vulnerable when he's going fast, right? Because like if you're going fast, you're gonna, get hit from something from off screen, and Sonic is basically 2 hits and dead at best, right? But Peppino is, first of all, always invincible. Like, you can't kill Peppino, basically. Like, he can fall out of, like, through certain holes in the ground is the only way he can technically die. And they have this very funny title card where it's like, service interruption, or like, what does it say? Like, you're we're experiencing broadcast difficulties or something like that.
I'm assuming there is some rap story to this whole game, which is why it's up on that TV too. Is that like we're actually watching a cartoon or something like that? Because
there is a synopsis. I'll read it in a minute. But what I love about this approach here is that, like, it's a momentum based platformer where really it's just about maintaining the momentum. I mean, there's exploration and other aspects here too, but like, you are at your most powerful when you're going at high speed. When you're going at high speed, most enemies can't touch you. You bash them off the screen if you're flying into them at high speed. So unlike Sonic, like, if you're able to maintain your momentum through a level, that's the most powerful you can get. And when you're at that top speed, you have more moves available to you. You can go into uppercuts, you can do the shine spark, you can go into rolls and dashes. So you're always incentivized to be using that momentum, going at high speed. You're never needing to slow down and take it easy, or you might need to slow down and take it easy at certain points, of course, but like, it's so much more a game about going fast than it's weird to say, but it feels to me more like a game about going fast than Sonic is, which is wild.
Yeah, well, and they bring in things that I think are directly Sonic influenced. Like situations where you enter into sort of a zone where you're really not even in control anymore. You're being pinged around the screen by like a series of springs or tubes that you enter into that are straight out of Sonic, and add to the sort of chaos of the whole game.
Yeah, it's clearly something that's like really engaged with the games and cartoons of the 90s. Here's that synopsis, by the way. This is from the Wikipedia page, so but this is mostly expressed through a cutscene that you can skip at the beginning each time you boot up the game, and it's a wordless cutscene. Peppino never speaks, really, as far as I can remember. Peppino Spaghetti is the owner of Peppino Pizza, a failing pizzeria. One day, Peppino is approached by Pizza Face, an evil floating pizza, who explains that a tower has just appeared next to the pizzeria, and that if Peppino does not hurry to climb the tower, Pizza Face will vaporize Peppino Pizza with an explosive nuclear laser. Peppino speeds over to the tower entrance, determined to defeat Pizza Face and save his failing business. Another chef, Gustavo, also enters the tower and later becomes playable along with his pet rat, Brick.
Very cute rat.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much the whole story. There's bits with there's 4 bosses. Actually, I think there's a fifth. I think there's 5 bosses. I'll be honest. I have not beaten this game. I got really stuck on the 4th floor boss, which I believe is the final boss before the final boss. But the bosses in this are quite difficult. Nate, maybe you could talk about your experience there. I think you had a little more trouble with them than I did, although I had a similarly kind of, the bosses are.
Yeah, well, so I think, set it up a little bit. So you're climbing the pizza tower, and there's 4 stages for every tower. And in those stages, while of course going fast, getting through it.
I thought there were more than that.
I think there's 4.
You might be right. I might be
4 stages.
It seems like a lot at the time.
It's 4 stages and a boss. So like 5.
Yeah.
So while you are exploring those 4 stages, while the game is mostly about going fast and getting to the end and then exiting, there is an entire exploration incentive process too, where there's you're trying to rescue pizza toppings and Peppino's friends and find hidden treasure and all these things. And once you've found enough of these treasures or hidden friends, you will earn enough money to unlock the boss. And the boss is an entirely different type of game than what you're playing through the normal stages. In the boss fights, you actually do have health. And these fights made me think more of like a Cuphead style encounter than anything like Sonic or Mario or any platformer. It is now a action, like, single screen combat, or even like a Hollow Knight. You're right there in the center of the screen. You got a boss, you have a certain amount of health, and the boss has a certain amount of health. Great theming. Usually, they're really interesting concepts and fun setups. But as Raygan said, I ultimately did not really like this part of the game. I'm not looking for something like this when I'm doing a lot of, complicated platforming. And then just for me personally, like, I'm really bad at sort of combat encounters where there's lots of little things floating around on the screen and you're doing a lot of dodging and avoiding and things like that. And so this was like a thing that was particularly set up for me not to enjoy it or be very good at it. And so I did get through a bunch of the bosses, but it felt like more of a drag. I just wanted to get through the bosses to get to more of the levels.
I kind of agree. I had a similar experience with them. I kind of got past that a little bit, at least with the first 3 bosses. When I started figuring out some of what I'd consider a little bit more advanced mechanics that I did not pick up on early in the game. I mentioned this earlier, but Peppino has a taunt button. It's the Y button on the controller. And in most cases, it doesn't really do anything except that it plays a duh sound and Peppino strikes a funny pose. And there is a lot of funny poses that he can strike.
Pretty accurate recreation, Raygan.
Thank you. I pride myself on my Foley work. But the taunt button also functions as a parry for many types of attacks in the game. And I only ever really used it with bosses, but once I figured that out, a lot of the bosses that throw things at you, like where there's a lot of things moving around on screen, it was mostly about trying to figure out like what phase in the boss's various cycles would be a good time to go and attack them. And in the meantime, using the taunt button a lot in order to parry attacks. So for example, like, some of the bosses would like throw lots of little projectiles. And if there was a projectile about to hit, you could hit that taunt button and it deflects it. And that ended up working pretty well. But I will say that, like, I kind of agree. I think it took a lot more effort to beat the bosses than I was kind of prepared for, given the rest of the levels aren't terribly hard. And I was looking through the settings thinking, like, maybe there's a difficulty setting I could turn down a little bit to keep things moving. And there is not. So I would have liked if there was something like that.
Yeah, this one's always hard for me to like to define my own tastes because, like, I like hard games. Hollow Knight, which I almost 100% did, is one of my favorite games of all time. And that's like a notoriously difficult, exactly this sort of combat encounter.
You're the Celeste guy on the podcast.
I love, that's my thing. But there was just something I think about like the pacing of the game that made these bosses feel like more of a chore to get through than a fun diversion. I didn't really feel like I was mastering any of the skills that I'd learned because you're confined to a single space.
They weren't really a test on any of the mechanics that for, like, you're using ultimately the same move set, but it is a very different thing that you're doing in the bosses. And it's the only time that he has, you can die. He has a health bar.
You start over, and they're a little bit longer than I would have expected them to be. I mean, once you figure it out, you can beat them relatively quickly, but like for me, it ultimately I'd have to like memorize their attack patterns, and it kind of takes really good execution, and I don't know, it just like it just really didn't click with me, and it there's enough of them that it really feels like a big part of the game is getting through these bosses, and I just think it would have been cooler if or more fun if the boss was a really challenging course, a really long course, something like that is more in line with the rest of the game.
I don't want to forget to talk about the music of Pizza Tower. Pizza Tower had an amazing soundtrack. Incredible. Apparently it's by a bunch of different artists, which, I mean, this is sort of the thing you get when you've got a game that's so long in development. Apparently I just looked it up. The OST is on SoundCloud and there are 32 tracks. And there's a lot of music in Pizza Tower. And how would you describe it, Nate? I'm not even sure how. It's very energetic and bouncy, but I
think I would say funky fresh.
Yeah, very funky fresh.
I definitely want to play it while eating pizza. I don't know. I mean, I think Toe Jam and Earl is another reference point for this. With an even higher speed. Toe Jam and Earl music is usually sitting back on the beat. This is pushing the beat forward. And it's a perfect complement to the insanity of this game.
What's this you just pasted in, Shane? Why'd you send me this?
What did you do?
I'm very impressed by the fan art that is coming out of the Pizza Tower fandom.
Ladies and gentlemen, Shane just sent me a link to a tweet of what I assume is Pizza Tower fan art drawn in a very accurate Pizza Tower art style, with Peppino's just looking back at the viewer over his shoulder, displaying very proudly his extremely round ass.
Double cheeked up on a Thursday.
Oh yeah, that's that's pretty good.
Peppino's got that wagon for sure.
There has been a lot of great fan art that, like, if you search for this game, like I mentioned earlier, it seems like there's a fan community for this. This guy had been working on this game since like 2018 and was really engaging with his community, through Patreon and other means, kind of developing this out in the open, releasing lots and lots of demos and engaging people to do things like work on his soundtrack and so on. So there's a lot of fan art. It's weird to kind of drop into a game that's relatively new and kind of has the feeling of like this has a fan community that's been going for years and already has its own in-jokes and everything.
I would say this is 1,000% like Celeste for Weirdos, and I'm glad it exists.
Celeste for Weirdos is a pretty good way of putting it.
I mean, I would argue it's a pretty fundamentally different game than Celeste, but that's fine.
Thanks, weirdo.
I mean, I was like, Celeste was way more of a game for me, so I guess I'm not the weirdo then.
Yeah, normie.
Yeah.
I don't know what else is there to say about Pizza Tower. I just loved it. I loved this game a lot. I had some bugs with it early on, but they all got fixed. This game had a lot of very small little bug fix and like quality of life tweak updates issued within the first couple of weeks that it was out. And little stuff like, replacing some of the menu graphics so that if you're connecting with a controller, it doesn't show you like keyboard mappings and stuff. So like good little stuff like that. This was a great Steam Deck game. This is probably my favorite thing I've played on the Steam Deck in a while. My daughter wanted to watch me play this, and I had a hard time explaining it to her.
Yeah, I put this on in front of some kids too, and I was like, whoa, they really liked it. I was surprised by that. Yeah, I for me, like the humor, the art style, this game was a big win on all those fronts. Like it really reminded me also of like Earthworm Jim in a really good way. Even those are games I didn't even really I liked for the art style and for the vibes.
Yeah.
Rocco's Modern Life is another maybe vibe that I was picking up from this, and it all of that has worked 100% for me. I am not hardcore enough to save the pizzeria, and that's okay with me. Like I didn't beat games when I was a kid either.
Yeah.
This game feels like being that kid again. I like that.
That's true. I felt a bit like, like playing a weird platformer in the 90s again, doing this. And I also am not sure I'll 100% this. As much as I love it, like I really love it. I really did hit a wall with the final. It's not probably the final boss, but with the floor 4 boss. There's all these like stuff even in the intro where it like shows you flashes of 4 main bosses, and I assume that the what's his name, the evil floating pizza is probably the 5th boss. I'm on the 4th of the sort of big 4 bosses, and man, if it's not like it's unreasonable. But I can't let this go without talking about the noise, who is my favorite thing in the game.
It's definitely a The Noid reference, right?
Right. But it's so good. The noise is he looks a lot like the Noid from the old like pizza
Domino's.
The Domino's commercials. He has some moves that are kind of inspired by that too. Things like the like pizza stomping thing to jump on, pogo sticking and everything. But man, he's just, I don't know. There's something really fun about like a platformer that is not trying to be cool and is not trying to be cute and is not trying to look good. It is just trying to be like, I don't know how to describe this. It's just so perfectly itself.
I mean, I would argue that it's actually gone to great lengths to look good. It's just good is a subjective term, right? Like, for what it's
like
doing.
The amount of effort put into just animation frames on this, like there's so many more like every movement that Peppino does has like a dozen frames of animation. Like you jump and he goes through a whole little squash and stretch. It's really, really impressive.
Yeah, and most of the enemies,
very good looking.
The enemies are not nearly as expressive, but they are as animated, So there's a ton, and the backgrounds are there's a ton going on in the backgrounds. The map design is wild. I mean, it's a pretty incredible accomplishment as far as that goes. The combination of design and gameplay. With that said, I'm also really torn on my overall takeaway on this game. I think it really is a true accomplishment, and I think for a lot of people this will be one of their favorite games, and I think that's probably justified. I think for me, between the bosses and the I never really connected with one of its core mechanics, so it's not really its fault even. It's just my own tastes. I didn't really like the runaway at the end of the level element, and I know that is core to the game, and to get rid of that would be a fundamental change in the game. But I think what it did for me is it altered the incentive structure of the rest of the game. So you would spend a fair amount, at least I would spend a fair amount of time exploring the full map. And the full map often has a lot of little micro challenges, like any good platformer does, that would allow you to result in a higher score. And sometimes these little micro challenges were pretty difficult and would take a fair bit of execution, which is exactly what I want in a platformer. I love that stuff. Give me a difficult platforming challenge all day. I'll take it. And so I'd go through and do all of those. And the escape from the level is sort of this panicked thing. You only have a small amount of time to get out of the level. And if you don't do it really well, you have to play the entire level over again. And while that only happened to me a couple times, it made me less incentivized to bother with all of the little micro challenges, because it made me feel like, well, if I fail the 2-minute escape, I'm going to have to do all this over again. And some of it was pretty challenging. And so I found myself less willing to like go for those A grades on levels because it just like didn't really feel fun to have to do it all over again. And I don't know. I mean, that it was like enough to make me feel like it wasn't as fun as it could be, because the maps were so beautiful. I wanted to explore every nook and cranny, but I didn't want to have to do it twice. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get it. Like I think that is kind of probably will be one of the most love it or hate it design elements here. This idea of like going into the end of the level and then having the time attack like retreat through the level after it's sort of changed form.
Yeah. I like it in principle. You tell me about it, I'm like, that sounds like an awesome idea. It was mostly about the like incentive to actually explore and be a part of the level overall. Like, I think maybe for me, it would have been more fun if the map was just longer and it was all about just getting to the end and then racing all the way back. But there's so much in this game about like finding.
Yeah, it's hard to mix that with exploration. There's so much exploration involved.
Yeah, you're supposed to find secrets. There's secrets all over the place. There's literally 3 secret level, like every map has 3 secrets that you can find that bring you to an entirely different map with a little challenge. And I loved finding those. But sometimes they were really hard to get to and really hard to execute, actually like unlocking. And so I'd get that and then go and fail the exit because of something. And I'm like, I don't really want to go through all of that to get back over to that secret. I'll skip it. I did it once. I don't need the points. You know, the points don't really matter. So I'm not going to go and do it all again.
I think it's a game that's partly designed for people who want to play levels more than once. This is the kind of like this is a score attack game. Every time you play through one of these levels, you get a score, including the letter grade. Apparently, the top rank is not an S rank; it's a P rank for pizza.
Yeah,
I never got a P rank. So my play style was, I think, maybe a little looser than yours. I wasn't doing that much exploring. I was really just sort of trying to make a beeline for the end of the level, the John pillar or Pillar John. It's a very fun. It never explains that as far as I can remember, but it's just sort of a very dour looking sort of moai head, guy, and you touch him, and then and then it says it's pizza time, and you have to escape. But yeah, I would just sort of like get to the end and make my way back. And I only had a couple of instances where I didn't make it through in time. But I definitely missed collectibles and optional objectives and secrets, a lot of them. And I was getting like B's and C's, some A's, but like I wasn't getting great scores. I think if I were a different player, that I would have then said, okay, now I'm familiar with the level. Let me go back into all of those and go for the A rank, go for collecting all of the toppins, which is what it calls the little pizza topping people. Go for collecting all of the, the secrets. There's a lot of secrets. And there's also, they're predictable. There's like every level has a hidden ice cream cone in it. I think I only found one. But I'm pretty sure they all have
the treasure.
Yeah.
The treasure's different, but yeah.
Oh, it's a different. Okay, I found almost none of those.
Well, it's an interesting one because you have to find one of the guys first, and then that guy unlocks the door to get you into the
yeah. There's a lot of this like conditional stuff. Like you need to find it. Even for just the regular path through a lot of the levels, you need to go find a key, then take it to a special door, and then open the door and go to it. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff. But it's like a complicated exploration platformer that is not a Metroidvania. That is really cool to me. It's like this.
Yeah.
I know I'm repeating myself, but like what I really feel is so cool about this is like this is an entire distinct game design idea for how to do platformers that nobody else is doing. And if you haven't played the Wario Land series, then this is something that you have never played before.
Which I've never played. Yeah, I've never played the Wario games, and I love platformers and hard platformers and complicated platformers. And there was just like these little things. The what I felt was a disincentivization. Was that a word of exploration? And the bosses made this game just a little less perfect because everything else about this game is, I think, incredible. And these are just my takes on it. I'm sure again there'll be people who like, well, you're saying you just
I'm with you.
it.
Honestly, I loved this game, but like everything you just said, I felt the two at various points. I had highs and lows with this game. I started with this game, I was like super, super into it. And then I started getting a little frustrated, say, I don't know, some point around like floor 2. And I had some lows where I was like, maybe this isn't that good. And then I don't know. I pushed past it a little bit and I ended up really high on it. That's not to say that you would necessarily, or that like somehow I just got good and that's what everyone should do. Like this is just, it's a game with ideas that are worth checking out. It may not be for everyone.
Mm-hmm. I don't know that our audience is like full of people who are into super deep, highly mechanical platformers, but
I don't think
there's going to be the guy. There's going to be them. They're going to be there. So if you're curious about this game, like it is worth picking up. This is one I'm going to mess around with a lot and absolutely never beat. I'll probably never get to boss 3. I'll probably just be like opening it up and messing around when I'm bored. But every time I do, I bet it makes me laugh. So it's really worth it.
I think everybody should. By the way, I underestimated. I just looked on the Steam page. The SoundCloud for the soundtrack is terribly incomplete. The Steam soundtrack is 73 tracks, including at least 10 bonus tracks. I'm going to go pay the extra $10 and download this. This game is on Steam right now. It is, as far as I know, right now Steam only. I'd be surprised if this doesn't make its way to consoles eventually, but this is a solo game developer.
I got to say, I think there's a track called Another One Bites the Crust. I like that very much.
That's a really good pun. Yeah, every one of these has almost every one of them has like
thematically, this may be the perfect video game.
I mean, like, there's no end of like puns that you can make with pizza. Like, pizza is just like, it's like a universal thing. And like weird, sweaty pizza chef is also an archetype that like we all have some kind of connection to. Platformers about high jumping Italians, also something that we all have a connection to. So like, this guy is tapping into something universal, in my opinion. I loved it, but yeah, I would 100% recommend people get this. It's on Steam for $20.
I'm going to say it. After last year, Peppino is in the running for Best Mario.
You know what? He may have this. He may have this in the bag. He may be the best Mario of the year already.
Kirby might have been the best Mario of last year, but it's a new year, baby.
It's a new
Pizza
year.
Head might be a dirtbag of the year too.
I don't know. I don't think he's quite present enough in the game to be. Although I don't know, we gave Dirtbag of the Year to the absent boyfriend who never appeared. So maybe presence isn't important.
Dirtbag. The Noid might also be. The noise.
The noise. Yes, trademarks enforced.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The noise might be a solid dirtbag choice. Although honestly, Peppino's got a little bit of a dirtbag energy to himself. Yeah. Like maybe
that's just your feelings towards fat, sweaty Italian men. So let's watch your Watch
Stop making
check,
a nationality thing.
check your biases here, please.
I guess I gotta. No, I just hate everyone who makes pizza, Nate.
Wow. All right. Now we're really getting into it. Almost an hour in and 9 years into this podcast.
Yep. So I don't know if we have time for what's making us happy this week, given that we're already 55 minutes in and we're just wrapping on Pizza Tower. Does anybody have any burning what's making us happies that you were just dying to get out there?
Hey, a continuation from a previous episode where I talked about playing the board game Scythe. There is a digital version of it.
Nice.
That was on Steam sale. Has a Mac port as well, which is always appreciated. And it was like $8. I think it's normally 20, but it's been on sale for a little while. If the game sounded interesting to you last week, you can pick it up on Steam. It is a true board game to computer port. I mean, it is a crunchy UI. You're going to have to spend a bunch of time in the tutorial, but it's a really cool game, and I'd recommend it. And the digital port is a really good representation of the board game. So I'd recommend it if you're looking to play a digital board game.
Very good to know. I will pass on the what's making me happy this week. I'll talk to you now. Oh, very brief plug, I guess, for the next episode. What's making me happy this week is I just finished playing Case of the Golden Idol with Laura, and we're going to do an episode on it soon, but I really liked it. So I would recommend folks check that out. Curse. Is it Case or Curse? I think it's Case of the Golden Idol.
Yeah.
Really good game. If you liked, or even if you haven't played, but think you might like the Obra Dinn, this is a similar sort of deduction vibe. Not the kind of game I usually play very well or on my own, but playing it alongside a capable companion made it work. So I had a great time with that. We'll talk about it more next week. Shane, what is making you happy this week, if you have anything?
Oh, sure. So this week, it's a real throwback. A game that I got weirdly deeply into, embarrassingly so, way back in like 2011, 2012, maybe that area. That's Minecraft, baby.
Nice.
So I was at my my in-laws' house, and my nephew he's like 6, and he's gotten into Minecraft, and I was like, hey, toss me the controller. And I gotta tell you,
let me show you how to Minecraft. Uncle Shane's gonna show you how to kill an Ender Dragon.
Honestly, it was just a good opportunity to be that cool uncle. So, I helped him like build his little base and all that, and I just had forgotten how satisfying that game is. I went ahead and so my son's 5, he's 6. That's a little young for Minecraft, but they're getting it. And you can go on Microsoft now and give them like $3 a month and get like a hosted server. So now I'm the cool uncle who threw down $3 to get a hosted server for the 2 kids to play together.
Nice.
And I have probably put in as many hours on that server as both of them combined. Because that game is just so good.
Don't go in Uncle Shane's pleasure palace. Don't go in Uncle Shane's pleasure palace.
Don't take the stuff out of my chests, kid.
It is more like I just enjoy the mindless like drudgery of mining for iron in that game, and they cannot survive in caves, so it's a perfect synthesis of our abilities. We're playing well together. I am toiling underground. Meanwhile, they are dying on the surface and squandering the riches that I bring up for them. So it is really fun. It was a lot of it's really just nice to re-explore that world, because I did put a ton of time into it, but it's been a very long time. The game has not changed in a lot of ways, but the ways that it has changed over those years are like subtle but really good. Like really, it's I think it's probably a decent time for if you ever had an affection for that game and you think like maybe the time is right, checking it out again. It's on everything now.
Yeah, what blows my mind is that not only is it on everything, but like most of the versions work fine with all of the other versions now. Like
there's
you
two
can play
versions
with like a kid on an iPad and a guy on a gaming PC and somebody on an Xbox, and they can all share a game, and that's wild.
Literally exactly what we're doing. Like my son's playing on the iPad, partially with the touch screen, partially with an Xbox controller. I'm playing on a PC, and my nephew's playing on an Xbox and on a Nintendo Switch, and there's two very versions of Minecraft. There's the old Java version that I learned on, and there's Bedrock, which is like the version that's on everything, weirdly everything except for the Mac, which would make my life a lot easier if it was on the Mac. But it's very cool that it's basically so ubiquitous, and like there's something about it that like draws kids in, like, and it's very strange to me that it's had that much longevity. The game is ancient, compared to almost anything.
Kids they're always making more of them,
Yeah. So, except me, I'm done. You seem to always be making more.
Same. Yeah, you're the only one.
Same. God help me.
It's Legos, but for computers,
Yeah.
So it's gonna
Legos, except skeletons kill you.
Gosh, no! Right here on this podcast, we're going to get to the bottom of the long-term popularity of Minecraft. Right? Let's get into it.
I don't get it.
It's honestly so funny when they like wander outside and he's like, "Help me, Uncle Shane!" I'm like, "You're right outside. Just walk in the door."
Yeah.
A skeleton is killing me. Come inside. That's all I gotta say.
That's good, though. That's good. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of The Short Game. You can find our show on the internet at www.theshortgame.net, or we got a nice little page at shortgame.omg.lol, which has links to all of our contact options. It has links to subscribe to the show or review the show on your podcast platform of choice. It has links to our Twitter and Mastodon accounts. Those are out there. Had to move the Mastodon account for the show. I think I mentioned this last time. We're at shortgame at mastodon.social now because zork.social is sadly shutting down. You can find me on, we're on Patreon. Listen, patrons, thank you so much for your continued support of the show. We've had a lot of really great patrons that have helped support the show for a couple of years now since we started the Patreon. It means a lot. It's it feels good, but also it gives us money to be able to pour into the podcast in little ways that help us all the time. Little things like replacing hardware when it breaks, buying games occasionally. We don't get a big budget from Patreon, but what we do, all of that goes into hosting the show, getting it to your ears, making it sound good, and occasionally making it easier for us to cover the kinds of games that we want to talk about. So we really appreciate you, all of our patrons. You can go to patreon.com/theshortgame and support the show. If you support us at just $1 a month, you get access to our Discord, which is where we talk about games and talk about the show and plan things. You can also support us at the $5 and up level. And if you do, I will send you some stickers. I'll also say on the podcast now that I'm probably going to have a link up soon for anybody who might be interested in supporting the show by buying t-shirts. We have a t-shirt up at Cotton Bureau, or will probably by the time you hear this. I'll warn folks in advance, and with humility, I understand t-shirts at the Cotton Bureau are expensive. It's a good place to do the kinds of things where we do very, single print runs of like 1 or 2 shirts. We're not a big podcast. There's no way for us to buy a bunch of these things in bulk and pass the savings on to you or whatever. So the way these things work out, every time you buy a t-shirt, we make $5. And they are expensive t-shirts. They are over $30. Most of that money goes into shipping and the cost of printing the shirt, et cetera, et cetera. They are really nice shirts. So if for some reason you don't want to support us on Patreon, but you would like to have a Short Game shirt, do that. Patrons, if you want access, I can get you a little bit of a discount. But for anybody who's not a patron, I'll have that link on our omg.lol page. I'll have a link on our Twitter and Mastodon pages as well. And I'll try to put a link in the show notes if I remember. But yeah, the Short Game shirt, it looks nice. You can also optionally order it as a beautiful hoodie or a sweatshirt. and there are some color options. I ordered all 3 because I'm the weirdo who wears his own merch, and I've been wearing the hoodie, and it's nice. It's a nice hoodie. If you like a pullover hoodie, it feels good. It's got a nice fluffy inside. So the Cotton Bureau, a little expensive, but nice stuff if you like a nice t-shirt or whatever. And let's see. I guess that's it. You can find me on Mastodon at Raygan at bird.rodeo. And that's Raygan at bird.rodeo. Nate, where can people find you?
On Mastodon at Nate at bird.rodeo and Twitter at NateSTL.
And Shane, where can people find you?
And you can find me at Y level -53 to -57, because that's where the diamonds are.
Nice, Shane. And all our socials are also on that omg.lol page if you go there. So it's shortgame.omg.lol. And once again, thank you, listeners, for joining us on this episode of The Short Game.